The storm had been pounding against the windows for so long that night that Michael Parker had almost forgotten what silence sounded like. The whole house felt like it was trembling under the restless fingers of the rain. And every now and then, a streak of lightning carved through the sky and flashed across the living room where he sat trying to convince himself that arriving would be okay. His 7-year-old daughter Emily had cried herself to sleep earlier. Exhausted from another day of whispered jokes at school about her having no mother and another night of Michael trying to stretch a paycheck that never seemed long enough. But the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that had been living inside his chest. For the last 3 years, ever since Lily, his wife, had closed her eyes forth last time, and just when he thought night couldn't grow heavier, just when he believed the world had already taken everything it could from him, a sharp knock shattered the fragile quiet of his thoughts. He froze. No one came to his house at that hour. No one ever came unannounced, but the knock came again, stronger, more urgent, carrying a message he couldn't yet understand. And when he opened the front door and saw his boss, Victoria Hale, standing drenched, trembling, and staring directly into him with eyes full of something he had never seen on her face before. Everything in his life shifted. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways life can change, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us continue bringing stories like this to you. Victoria was the kind of woman no one ever imagined showing up at Simeon's doorstep in the middle of the night. She was composed, brilliant, impeccably dressed, and known for her unshakable professionalism. There had been rumors in the office that Shirley slept, that nothing rattled her, and that she had no personal life to speak of. But the woman standing at his door looked nothing like the image he had built up in his mind. Her hair was soaked and clinging to her face, her white blouse plastered to her skin from the rain, her breath uneven, as if she had run through the storm. Michael could see something behind her eyes, something that made him step back instinctively as if giving her room to breathe. She whispered his name at first, her voice soft but trembling, and he felt his chest tighten because it sounded like Simeon who had carried too much for too long. When he reached out and touched her arm to steady her, she flinched, not out of fear, but as though the warmth startled her. And before he could ask what had happened, before he could gather his thoughts, she said the words that would replay in his mind for days. She told him she needed to hear something he once said at the office. Something he had said on a day he had no idea she was listening. Then she stepped closer, rain dripping from her hair onto his floor, and said, "Say that again." "But look at me." Michael's mind spun, months earlier. After a difficult meeting where layoffs had been rumored, he had tried to encourage a new intern who felt overwhelmed. He had said something about how people who carry heavy loads often don't realize they're heroes, simply because they wake up and choose to keep going. He thought the words had been lost in the noise of the office, but apparently they had landed somewhere he never expected. Now, with Victoria standing inches from him in the dim light of his doorway, he realized she needed those words in a way he couldn't yet understand. She needed them like someone drowning needs air. He repeated them softly, his voice low and steady, telling her that people who keep moving despite the weight, pressing on them, are stronger than they realized, that serving the dark days made them braver than they knew. As he spoke, her eyes filled with tears. Tears he had never imagined she was capable of shedding. She closed her eyes as though that single word had begun sewing together the torn pieces inside her back, thread by delicate thread. And when she finally opened them, she looked at him with a rawness that stole the air straight from his lungs. Michael guided her inside with a gentleness that felt like an unspoken promise, giving her room to breathe, yet silently letting her know she didn't have to face anything alone. Victoria stepped into the soft, amber glow of the living room like someone stepping out of a long, relentless nightmare. Her gaze drifted toward the hallway where Emily slept, and her expression softened in a way that made something in Michael's chest tighten. He handed her a towel and a blanket, murmuring apologies for the plainness of his home. But she shook her head almost instantly, whispering that this was the warmest place she'd been in years. For a moment, they stood there quietly while the storm screamed against the windows, as if trying to rip the world apart. Yet inside this small room filled with mismatched furniture and the faint scent of apple candles, two lives that had been running side by side without ever touching finally collided. And then she told him why she had come, earlier that day. Her estranged father had died, a man she had spent her entire life begging to be proud of her, only to fail every single time. As a child and later as a young woman, nothing she achieved mattered, not her trophies, not her grades, not her promotions. Her victories were dismissed, her choices mocked, her dreams ridiculed until she learned to hide herself behind a flawless mask. She built walls so high even she couldn't see over them. Perfection became her armor, silence her weapon, distance her only defense, but when the call came about his passing, something inside her fractured. Without a word, she walked out of a board meeting. She drove until rain covered her windshield in sheets. Years of unspoken hurt pressed against her chest so heavily she thought her ribs might break. And somehow the only place she could think to go was Michael's house. She couldn't explain it. She only knew she needed the softness she had once heard in his voice, the kindness he had shown his daughter, the warmth she had never been offered growing up. Michael listened without interrupting, without offering hollow comforts, simply grounding her with his presence. Her shoulders trembled as she spoke, though she kept apologizing for falling apart. He reassured her quietly that she didn't need to be strong tonight. She had survived enough battles alone. Sharing the weight didn't make her weak. It made her human. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to her that way. Emily woke up at some point, rubbing her eyes as she wandered into the living room. When she saw Victoria, the little girl tilted her head, then walked right over and placed her tiny hand on Victoria's knee, asking in a sleepy voice if she was hurt. Victoria sucked in a broken breath as tears slipped down her cheeks. That simple, innocent touch, something so rare in her life, nearly shattered her. She whispered that she would be okay. And Emily, with the wisdom only children seem to possess, told her that crying was good because it made space inside for better feelings later. Michael watched as Victoria pulled Emily into an embrace, holding her like someone who had starved for affection and had finally found a safe place to land. As the night stretched on, the storm eased and the house fell into a hush that felt almost sacred. Victoria eventually drifted to sleep on the couch wrapped in the blanket he'd given her, while Emily curled up against her as though she instinctively understood. Victoria needed comfort even more than she did. Michael sat in the armchair, watching them with an ache he didn't recognize at first. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to share space with someone whose presence didn't drain him. Seeing Victoria like this, soft, exhausted, human, rattled something loose inside his chest. In the days that followed, everything began shifting slowly, naturally, beautifully. Victoria didn't rush back to the office. Instead, she took time to breathe for the first time in years. She wandered through quiet parks with Emily, sat at Michael's kitchen table sipping coffee while he cooked, helped Emily glue pieces of school projects together, listened to Michael talk about Lily and the dreams he once held before life had changed him. Nothing between them was romantic at first. Nothing dramatic. It was simply two wounded souls learning how to stand without collapsing under the weight of their pasts. And still something gentle and unmistakable began to bloom. Victoria saw how tirelessly Michael worked, how he woke before sunrise and returned home past dark, how he never complained even as exhaustion hollowed his eyes. She saw the fierce tenderness with which he loved Emily, the kind of patience she had never been given. Michael saw the quiet courage in Victoria, the way she allowed herself to feel again, to laugh softly, to breathe without bracing for judgment. She helped him organize overdue bills, helped Emily study, and even fixed the porch light he had been ignoring for months. One night, after Emily had gone to bed, Victoria stood on the porch looking at the stars. Michael joined her, leaning beside her. She admitted she was afraid of going back to work, afraid of slipping back into the armor she had spent a lifetime wearing. Michael told her she didn't have to. She could choose a gentler path now. A new life. One that healed instead of hardened. She turned to him, truly looked at him, and whispered that she hadn't felt this safe in years. His breath stilled. Memories of her drenched and trembling in his doorway flickered through his mind. Before he could speak, she reached for his hand. She told him he had saved her that night without realizing it. She told him the words he had spoken long ago, words meant for someone else. Entirely had breathed strength into her she hadn't known she still had. Then she whispered the sentence that would stay with him forever. Michael, I don't want to be strong alone anymore. Life didn't magically smooth out after that. There were difficult days, painful memories, and moments where doubt crept in. But they faced those storms together. Victoria eventually returned to work with a softened heart. She became a different kind of leader, warmer, more patient, more human. She encouraged her team, checked on them, and built a workspace that felt safe. Michael continued his job, but the loneliness that once shadowed him had slowly faded. Victoria stood beside him. Emily adored her. And together the three of them built something messy and imperfect, but real. Months later, one quiet evening filled with soft music and the smell of fresh bread, Victoria told Michael she believed Lily would be proud of him, that she'd want him to be happy again. Michael closed his eyes, emotion hitting him like a wave. When he opened them, Victoria was watching him with tears of her own, and he knew she meant every word. She wasn't replacing his past. She was becoming something new, something gently unexpected, something healing. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know. And before you go, please comment below. Everyone deserves a second chance. And as the sun dipped low, painting warm light across the three of them seated around the kitchen table, Michael realized something profound. Sometimes, the knock you fear at midnight isn't the thing that shatters your life. Sometimes it's the thing that pieces it back together. And Victoria, who once arrived trembling in the storm, had finally found the place her heart could rest.